Hello everybody, and welcome, dragging out the intro while the loading screen's on, to another episode. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode. Yesterday we came and had a little bit of a conversation here in our home instance with the leader of our cycle, but I found out I was on the wrong cycle for some of the information I wanted to give you, so I've kind of remade the character again, and we're going to actually speak to this character again. So just to catch anyone up, if they don't remember, we'll be able to read our personal story thingy-mabob, which should be on our hero panel just here, the story section. Don't know how many of you guys still read these, but these are pretty cool. So this was a summary of our character, or the decisions we made, and this time, as you can see here, I am now a cycle of the noon, which is what I wanted before. Fighting the nightmare. Nightmare's poison has withdrawn from the dream. See, I guess Sylvari was one of the last things that they designed, and you compare this to what was written for like the human stuff, which was the first stuff they designed. There's a big difference. But anyway, we're now on the call to service, and we helped the residents of Caledon Forest, and now we have been tasked with meeting Keith in the Grove. She messaged us, she sent us that mail saying, oh hey Valiant, come see us so we can talk about this vision of the white stag which we both shared. We had this conversation last episode, which we'll skip through here. Now we've been tasked with tracking down the stag, but the leader of our cycle, who Keith kind of brought us here to speak to about this dream, is now also here too. So we can speak to Nima, and she'll tell us a little bit about what she does around here at the Grove. She says, you did well, Valiant. You fought hard and refused to surrender. I am impressed. I'm not sure where she's talking about then. I'm guessing it was when we were in the dream, or maybe just after we got out. But we can ask again, what's it like to be firstborn like her and Keith, just as we could with the previous person. We are visionaries. I awakened at the zenith of the first day of our race. I'm a warrior and a defender, and I founded the Wardens. So the Wardens we heard an episode ago. I've seen the Wardens in the Grove. Can you tell me more about them? They are honourable friends, protecting the Grove from any who would harm the Sylvari or the Pale Tree. Now, we say, oh, how wonderful. May I ask another question? And we can say, tell me more about the cycle of noon. We are awakened during the heat of the day, she says. We're adventurers, daredevils, and soldiers. You are of our cycle, Valiant. Brilliant. What about the other cycles? Noon, night, and dusk. I think it was dusk we saw last time in the previous episode. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and the firstborn of each respective one does a different thing. And what makes our time of birth so significant? Dreams change with the hours. Someone's cycle can show us their true strengths. I believe that's the same dialogue as before. But what's interesting about this character, Niam, I suppose it's the right way to say it, is she, as she says, she founded the Wardens. The Wardens are kind of like the Seraph, I suppose, if you want to compare them to something from another race. They're the guardians and defenders of the homeland of the Sylvari. It's interesting that the ArenaNet named them the Wardens, because Wardens were something we knew in Guild Wars 1 too. In Guild Wars 1 there was another great forest, a bit like this that we're now seeing here on the Tarnished Coast. Probably even better than this one. Bigger trees, more dense. Like, it was so dense when you looked up, well, that goes without saying here, but it was so dense you could never really see the sky. There was just a canopy, what felt like miles above you, constantly blanketing out the sun. Like, it was this incredible massive forest that was in factions in a completely different continent to the south. But in there, we actually met and came to know of a race of creatures that were kind of like the Sylvari. They were very plantish, they were humanoid, called the Wardens. And there's kind of a lot of information about those Wardens and how nobody really knows where they came from. There was an event that happened in said forest, the Echovald Forest, that petrified it all and turned it to stone a long time ago. What is that? 450 years ago it all petrified, so all the life was stripped out of this place, and the Wardens that lived there and defended that forest and just kind of lived at peace there and just defended where they came from, they all became corrupted and petrified with this jade wind that stripped all life out of the forest, and from then on they became kind of these enraged things that were constantly fighting humans because they felt that the humans were to blame for all of the damage that had been done to their home. And I think there's a lot of similarities you can draw between the Sylvari we're seeing here, who have named themselves a group called the Wardens, as well as the Wardens that we saw out in the Echovald Forest 250 years ago and before. So one of my favourite theories about the Sylvari is there could very well be more than one tree that bore the Sylvari into the world, and we're going to see that as we continue our personal story along. And I really like the idea that the Wardens we saw in the Echovald Forest were a form of Sylvari, perhaps, and that they came from a different pale tree on a different continent. And that gives us a really nice kind of incentive as Sylvari players to go and explore that continent should ArenaNet ever release an expansion. So that's a really nice kind of facet of the Sylvari Sylvari that I can just kind of throw at you guys straight away. A really nice theory about them. And also, on top of that as well, there were little creatures in the Echovald Forest that we saw called Thorn Wolves, right? They only really existed there in Guild Wars 1. Well, Thorn Wolves are a type of creature that we see with a specific type of Sylvari that exist up here in Tyria too. They're named the same thing, Thorn Wolves. So again, that's another kind of relation between the two. So yeah, it's kind of a nice theory. You might have heard of it before. I went off on that little bit of a talk about how I've mentioned it before on the channel. If you hadn't, though, it's a pretty cool idea. As I say, like, the Sylvari are quite mysterious. We don't really know where they came from, but that's a nice hint at their roots. Anyway, so we're doing this next personal story step. We can double-click to see. We are searching for the White Stag in the Verdance. I'm not sure how we're supposed to have tracked this down, but you can come to this this star here and interact with it, and it says that these appear to be the tracks of a large hoofed animal, a stag perhaps. Ah, well, what do you know? So we can actually follow the tracks if we want. And this continues on our personal story. This is quite good because, as you've seen already through the LP or through playing the game yourself, a lot of this game, as far as the personal story is concerned, is just walk from A to B, and when you go to B, you will go into a personal little instance that's separate from the world, where you will do a defend thing, or you'll escort someone, or you do something like this, some very basic mundane thing that doesn't last very long, like a mini mission, and then you leave, and then you go from B to C, and then C is another little mini mission, and it just goes like that on and on and on. And the personal story, despite the fact it's spread throughout the world, doesn't really integrate into the world that well, but this quest's kind of different. So we find the next one. It says there are more hoof tracks here, and they're very fresh. This looks like the right path, so we can follow the tracks even further. So that's the way the personal story usually works, but you actually see in this quest, I actually kind of like it. I think it's pretty good. It's not like the other personal story steps, because we're actually just kind of going around the world and interacting with the world as it is without, you know, massively overusing these little instances. There's this whole chunk of this personal story step before we go into a little instance like that, which I think is really fantastic and I really kind of enjoy. It's just a shame that they don't really do it elsewhere in the game, and the extent of it is just going to these little dots here, but I really do like that, and I wish that there were more NPCs that we could go and speak to in real villages and stuff, instead of simply just zoning into little instances all the time. I think it takes something away from the game, it really does, and this was quite fresh when I played this earlier. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty fun. So the stag tracks here are quite fresh. They lead north into the nearby caves, these being the nearby caves here, and you can then just go and activate the next one, and that will actually put you into the instance straight away, where you can then actually explore what I consider to be a cave that doesn't actually exist in Caledon Forest, which is pretty interesting. Or you can come into the cave itself. Sometimes there's events here. There's like a giant spider event that you can find here, but this is also a heart, one of my favourite hearts in the game. If I was less lazy, I would probably like compile a my favourite hearts video at some point, but this would probably make it up there. The whole idea of this heart is you're fighting these spiders in this cave, and you're basically eating these mushrooms that are around the area that will either shrink you really tiny, like me right now. I'm a tiny little Sylvari, smaller than usual. You feel tiny. Small spaces are no barrier to you, which will eventually expire, but you can go and run around and explore Caledon Forest as this tiny little Sylvari. And yes, if you're playing as an Asura, it really does get very small, as you might imagine. So you can do this, or you can eat the red caps again, and they've got a chance of making you really big too. And depending on whether you're big or small, it changes the things you can interact with. So here there's this spider nest, which, because we're really small, we can actually climb inside and throw the spiders out, which is a fucking terrifying thought, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, we can do that. But if we go really big, we can't do that. Instead, we have different things to interact with. But in Death Shroud, we got these skills that we're slowly unlocking, I haven't talked about yet. First one's just an auto attack that does a fair bit of damage if you have a lot of life force. But obviously, because as you're in Death Shroud, you slowly lose life force, or your second health bar, as it were. You want to get those auto attacks off kind of early so that you get the maximum damage out of them, and then leave it, as far as I can see, anyway. And that second skill we just unlocked actually teleports us, which I'll show you guys in a bit once we've got a bit more life force and we can go back in. I've been talking to someone in the comments a lot about the axe. I'm still not that keen on it. I don't know. It's still just retaliation. I guess in big group scenarios, the axe could be quite fun, because you can still use the axe along with a lot of the more other powerful necromancer abilities that are available in the game. But still, I will swap it out, and I'll show you guys some other weapon sets as soon as I can, to be honest. But we'll eat these red caps. They're keeping us all really small for some reason at the moment. I don't know why. So I was here like, I don't know, 2 hours ago, and it was making me really big at the time, so we'll see what happens. It might have something to do with night and day, I'm not sure. We can speak to the heart guy as well, I suppose, when we finished it. But I want to show you guys what it's like to get really big in here, because that's probably my favourite thing. I also found out, you know, you guys might know that I did a utility belts video a while ago where I kind of looked at some of the consumables in the game. I've kind of learned about, yeah, there we go, now we're really big, you see, so now we're like this massive Sylvari, and because we're now a huge Sylvari, we can pick up these big rocks, and the spiders underneath them go scuttling around, but we can throw the rock back on top of them, some kind of horrible poetic justice, I suppose, and we can kill them with that. But yeah, you know, I did that that utility belt video a while ago. I kind of want to do a follow-up to that too, because I've learned about a lot of other things along those lines, and one of them is a tonic that makes you big like this, just whenever you want. It's expensive, it's like a silver or two, I think, to buy each one, but it's really fun. You can pop it and you can chain them, and you can just do all combat things. Forevermore, if you had enough money and you were happy to double-click all the time, you could just be a giant character, and I really want to make like a really big Norn and use it, and that will probably be one of my characters. I don't know whether I'll LP a character like that, but it's going to be quite fun. It's quite nice as well on my Asura, that particular potion becoming big like this, because on an Asura you have such tiny weapons you can barely see anything that's going on. Like, it almost feels pointless to have the skins, but with that tonic I get just a bit bigger and I'm a bit more noticeable, and it's quite cool. Anyway, we're back down to normal size, which feels really small right now. We can go into Death Shroud. So this one here, this is called Dark Path. When you throw it at someone, it's a projectile. You throw it at someone, it will bleed and chill them, which is nice, of course. As a necromancer, conditions are always handy. 3 stacks of bleed as well, in fact. And also when it hits you, it will teleport you over to them. And that can be interesting in numerous ways. The necromancer is kind of a slow class, to be honest, compared to a lot of other classes. And that's one of your best ways to use mobility, if you can get it in the right way. But it's obviously dependent on an enemy being there for you to teleport towards. But also it's nice because there's some other abilities in Death Shroud that function quite nicely with it. So you can teleport over to someone and then you can just start sucking life from them in point blank AoE and stuff, which is quite cool. But we're almost done here. Just kill this next spider. Of course you can do this heart without getting big or small ever, which, you know, if you're interested in that you could, but I think the most fun thing about this is being really small. In fact, the tiny mushrooms don't really make you that much smaller, but the big ones make you absolutely humongous. Anyway, there we go, that's the spiders down. Just wanted to show that off to you guys because I think it's quite a good one, and it's near where the personal story is.
Perhaps. It looks somewhat dangerous though, doesn't it?
A bit, I suppose. But that's part of the excitement of the hunt. We'll be fine.
This obviously some event is about to start, which I can't be bothered with. So anyway, we track the white stag to here and we go in. I think that's some awesome concept art, by the way. I think we saw that concept art in particular a long time ago when ArenaNet released like some concept art reels of the game before we had much footage, really. We only had like 2 trailers, and that was one of the things that came up. On those reels, I talk about them all the time, but seriously, I would recommend go back and watch them. They're on ArenaNet's YouTube channel. Like, you listen to the ambient noises that are on those reels. It's fantastic. It makes Tyrius just seem so magical and, it's so ambient and cool and amazing, and sometimes they animate some of the concept art like they do in cutscenes, but it's stuff that you've never actually seen in game. It's really good, and that was one of the things I remember. Like, the camera pans across the bridge, and you're like, oh, the Maguma jungle looks so good now. Anyway, we're going in here, and there's sounds of somebody struggling deeper in the cave, saying, if anybody's there, can you come help me? On my other necromancer, this was ridiculously easy to come in and kill, and now I'm realizing how much you can struggle as a lowly level 2, but hey, we will persevere. I don't know whether you actually have to kill everything to get to the guy. There's a chance you don't. I don't know whether I want to risk it. I'm not sure what else there is to talk about as far as the Sylvari plot's concerned right now. You know, the Wardens is one of the more interesting topics with the Sylvari, and in particular as well, just there's some other stuff to do with other trees for the Sylvari that I want to talk about later when we get to those points in the personal story. But beyond that, there's really, I don't know, there's a lot of mystery, but there's not too much we can speculate on until much later. I don't want to ruin certain things. Oh my god. So, some reason kind of explode in your face, as you've noticed. They do a lot of damage to you, but if you bait it out, you should be okay. Like, they're not going to hurt you too much. They also die really quickly, so if you can just, like, particularly as a necromancer, I suppose I can talk a lot about that, but there's a lot of CCs. Obviously, on the axe, we've got a cripple, and I will use that to great effect in here. Anyway, here you're seeing footage be sped up. I used to do this a lot. I might start doing it in the Guild Wars 2 LP as well, so it doesn't feel like we have, like, 40-minute episodes when we really don't need to. This is just me progressing through the cave, killing stuff, so you still get to see everything, and there'll still be commentary, but it will go a little bit quicker and it'll be post-commentary. So yeah, I might start doing that a little bit more in the LP too, in addition to other things that I want to start changing. Okay, hello, who have we got here? They overwhelmed me, I need aid, he says. So this is a guy called Gavin. I really wish that those damn things would stop exploding in my face. We've got 2 new skills here because obviously we've got a Warhorn equipped. The first one is a Wail of Doom. It dazes people. In not incredible range. I don't know, I'm not a massive fan of CC like daze in PvE, so I probably won't be using this that much. We also have Locust Swarm though. This is kind of nice as a necro because it gives you swiftness, particularly for PvE. If you're running around a lot, then yeah, I can imagine using Locust Swarm quite a lot. And a bit of AoE damage around you, but aside from that, not too much. This is actually a defend mission here. I don't know how well I'm going to do with it. We're going to go back into Death Shroud because I'm taking so much damage. The Locust Swarm will continue to hurt people while you're in Death Shroud, which is quite nice. And also the final ability in Death Shroud kind of functions itself a little bit like Death... sorry, why am I calling it Death Swarm? Locust Swarm. It functions a little bit like that, so you can kind of stack them on top of one another, which is a nice idea. I kind of played with it a little bit, but it doesn't seem too strong. It wouldn't make me use the Warhorn for combat reasons. The only reason I would use this, or I see myself using it, is for the swiftness to run around quickly, just because it's such a pain in the arse otherwise as a necro. But then you can use other stuff that will speed you up. You know, there are boosters and things, so what's the point? Anyway, that's that wave done. We got another wave coming. I don't remember how many waves attack, but a few do. But yeah, we're in this kind of weird cave place here. I'm not actually sure where this is meant to be in Caledon Forest, honestly. I don't think I've ever explored it. I might have. I don't think I've ever explored it out in the overworld. I certainly don't recognise seeing these like sunken ships that have somehow stacked themselves in against the walls, which is... It looks cool and it makes me wonder how they got here, but it's a pretty ambient little cave actually. Like you can see some bats as well. I'll show you as we walk out. Anyway, who are you? What do you want?
Be at ease. You're safe now. Are you wounded?
I am. But I can't let that hinder me. I'm looking for a white stag. If I let it escape, the consequences will be... dire.
Then we have something in common. I'm also looking for the stag. Have you seen it?
It was here, but it fled to the eastern woods before I could catch it. And then the undead arrived. You have done me a good turn, and you seem strong and swift. If we hunt together, we might have more luck.
I'd be glad to work with you. Let's begin our hunt at once.
Swift, because I have swiftness in the Warhorn, you see? You see? Okay, hello Gavin. So who are you? He just says, watch your back, the undead are relentless, discussion can wait. Sure, okay, so I guess the thing we're meant to be thinking now is, who is he, why does he want the stag? Don't forget he just said there will be dire consequences if we do not find it. Why are there going to be dire consequences? Well, I guess we'll have to find out if they ever do give a reason. But yeah, the bats, by the way, you can't really see because of the locusts here. Wow, there's a surprising amount of detail on these things. Look at that. That's cool. Yeah, the bats are kind of up in the sky there. They're pretty cool. I don't know. I just like how ambient this cave is. It's a nice little area. Now that Gavin's with us, he can kind of take the brunt of the attacks. If you're like me, you're quite low level. That is how I would recommend dealing with this. He doesn't seem to take any damage at all, but he's got a permanent cripple on him, which is quite nice for him. I don't know whether you can cure that if you're an elementalist or something, or you've got some way of curing conditions on people. But I guess it's probably not a true, you know, like a conventional condition that can be cured. Anyway, we got a few more. Make sure that none of them are kind of explodey ones. And we'll daze them all, and we'll let our plague eat them. There's another plague ability as well you get when you're underwater, and he uses one of the Guild Wars 1 skill names, which I thought was quite good and it's quite fitting. And basically, I think it turns into krill or shrimp, like a swarm of shrimp or something, undead shrimp, which is a pretty creative idea for a skill, I suppose. But yeah, I think that's it. There might be one more group that attacks. More dead wardens as well. Like, I wonder why... Like, if a stag came through here, why did so many wardens chase it? And why did a stag come here in the first place when it's just full of undead? Like, is it somehow tied together? And I'll throw it out there. I genuinely don't know. This is like... While I'm LPing through this is the first time really I'm running a Sylvari. I've read through a lot of the Sylvari quests and just general overviews of the plot, but I've not... personally myself played through Sylvari stuff yet, so a lot of it I'll know kind of the quest we're doing, but not any more than 2-3 in advance, so should be interesting.
Weakens me. I need to catch my breath.
Okay, I'm sure you do. Can I speak to you now? I know you're catching your breath, but I want you to talk.
If we do not find it soon, the undead will, and they'll tear it apart. We must keep looking. We must.
You need to rest, Gavin. You were badly wounded. We'll keep going, but not to the point of risking your life.
My life means nothing compared with finding the stag. Still, you are right. I'm of little use to you like this. I shall seek healing and meet you near Caer Verdant when my health is improved.
That is the wisest course of action. The stag is a wild animal and a creature of the dream. It will survive for a while on its own.
How do we know it's a creature of the dream? What's all that? I don't know whether I like my character's voice. I think I do. I think I prefer it to the Asura voice anyway, even though it's very likely they're just trying to fake a British accent. Some words just seem to have weird emphasis on them. Anyway, level up, hooray! That doesn't mean anything at these low levels, but whatever. Hello, Gavin. Right, talk to me, man. We still didn't really learn why he cares about the stag. He says, I know we'll find the stag now that we're working together. Sure, well, it's good to have you a partner, but why did you come out here? Astoria Villages, so this was the place we kind of were born from, told me the stag was in the area. I thought I could track it down. That's actually interesting. I wonder if there's lots of little villages in, you know, where the blue fruits are, so there are different Sylvari from different villages. That's kind of cool. Or do we all hail specifically from Astoria? I mean, that can't be true. Okay, sure. But why were you tracking it down? Why were you interested? You're badly injured. Do you need rest? Yes, I noticed. After I find a vendor, I'll meet you at Caer Verdant. I quite like this because you're like, oh, you're badly injured. And he's like, yes, I noticed. It sounds very, facetious. Is that the right word? He's being sarcastic. Anyway, why did you want to find the stag? The stag is a manifestation of the dream, symbolizing hope. It could do so much for us if only we could capture and tame it. I absolutely agree. We'll find it, I promise. So I don't know whether I really believe his kind of reasoning. He thinks there's dire consequences because obviously the undead will kill it. I don't know why the undead would be hunting it, but there you go. So the white stag, the plot thickens a tiny little bit, I suppose. An example of one of the better personal story quests, just because it has you do some interesting stuff before just throwing you into an instance. But there you go. So thanks very much for watching, guys. We will continue this. Actually, tomorrow I might do that utility belt video. I might do a follow-up because there are so many cool items that I found. But yeah, we will continue it when we continue it, and I will catch you next time. Also, somebody suggested we bow on the Sylvari, which I think is a good idea. I'll see you next time. It also shows off our lovely spidery head.